What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place, and we got one more top 10 list for you to round out this Final Fantasy preview season. We've already done the top 10 sleepers, top 25 competitive cards. That means today it's time for the top 10 commander cards in the main set. Usually when I do the top 25, that incorporates Commander and Standard, Pioneer, Pauper, all the formats into one big list. But I wanted to do it a little bit differently this time, and it has the effect of, making my Standard homies a little bit happier because they have a list all their own now. It's not just like, oh, it's good in Commander, it's good in Commander, it's good in Commander, which is what top 25 lists sometimes devolve into. Didn't have to worry about that this season, but since we kicked Commander out of the room for the big list, I felt like I still needed to do a top 10 Commander cards. Now, I know that this channel isn't necessarily known for Commander content, but I was on Shuffle Up and Play this last season, so I think that my opinion is valid on Commander. And that is a huge joke, don't take it too seriously, but ever since I was on Shuffle Up and Play, I've been building a lot more Commander decks. Just in the last couple of months, I built 6 or 7, so I definitely have the bug, and that means in YouTube rules, I get to have an opinion, but it also means that you get to ridicule my opinion in the comments section, and that might be really fun. But despite the fact that my opinions on Commander can be a little bit silly from time to time, as some might put it, that doesn't stop me from being excited about a bunch of cards in this set. So here we go, top 10 Commander cards in the main set for Final Fantasy. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back ready to pop off with some honorable mentions. I got 3 of them this time around. And I know this is a main set list, but one of my HMs had to be from the Commander set, and it was almost Celeste. I'm really excited to brew with her, but in the end, I cannot deny how much I want to play Papalimo Totolimo. Mr. Potatoes over here lets us play an Orzhov Spellslinger deck, and I'm definitely putting this one together. I've already ordered copies of Monastery Mentor and Sedgemoor Witch to really make this thing do some stuff. There's a lot more that you can do in Orzhov Spellslinger than just make a bunch of tokens and stuff, but it's just something that we don't often get to do, and I'm really excited to do it. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about like a Commander card that's in the Commander set, other than just to tell you that the deck is definitely getting built, and don't be surprised if you see me play it one of these days. Especially considering there's plenty of like in the game combos in the stinking thing. You got Bolus's Citadel plus Sensei's Divining Top to keep you playing the top card of your library and gaining life and dealing damage to everybody. It just seems like the best time you can possibly have. Good dude here, but something from the main set that's a little more honorable mention-y is Grahatia. This thing might cost 5 mana, but it's actually not a terrible way to draw cards in white. Now, we got a lot of really good ways of drawing cards in white, so I'm just not sure if this makes most cuts, but maybe in an artifact-centric deck. Now, it could potentially go in like an Elysil Core Aristocrats build, a black-white deck that wants to sacrifice stuff, but I think it might be a little bit too expensive, even in casual Commander, for decks like that. It's artifact decks. I'm a little bit more excited about this in, with a Commander like, say, Jan Jansen, or Jan Jansen, or however we want to say the guy's name. Something that wants to sacrifice artifacts anyway, and then that puts more artifacts on the table, which can die in combat to blocks and stuff like that. And Grahatia should be drawing you a bunch of cards in that situation, but you could put this in Brea as well. Just about any deck that cares about artifacts, this could go in if you can afford to cast it. So this is just not a card I see a lot of people talking about, and that's why it's in my HMs. I think people should be talking about it. Drawing cards is really powerful, and being able to draw it 4 times in a turn cycle seems all right. But the last honorable mention this time around was Sid. I think he's a cool guy to brew around, and people are going to have fun, but I'm actually not too sure about his power level. The thing that I ended up putting as my last HM was Excalibur II this time around. Now, this is actually one of the more recently previewed cards right up towards the end of preview season. Might be why I'm not seeing too much chatter about it, but just kind of bugs me. There's a lot of life gain decks in Commander that could easily leverage this, and it turns your Soul's Attendants and Soul Wardens and Hinterland Sanctifiers and all your dorky little 1-power like life gain guys into real threats at any point in the game. Now, you could throw this on your Commander if your Commander's like Amalia Benavides Aguirre or something like that. Maybe this could even be a secondary win condition in like a Hope Estheim deck. We'll get to that later, but this is just one of the better looking equipments in a set full of really good equipments, at least to my mind. Won't be the last that we talk about today, and honestly, I think the equipment that's on the main list might surprise some people. It's not like the Masamune or the Buster Sword. Something a little bit weirder, but this is a lot weirder. It's still a sword, still a sword, but it's really, really cheap to cast, fairly cheap to equip, and again, you can throw it on like any little creature over the course of a game, and it can probably end up getting a lot of charge counters. So I actually have some real faith in this to boost the life gain decks to a point where they can actually win games from time to time. But let's get to the main list here. My number 10 is a Realm Reborn. Not Realm from FF6, but a realm like a place. It could get confusing because Final Fantasy characters have names that mean things. But anyway, this, I will say, if there was ever a main set standard legal card that was obviously designed for Commander and not much else, well, there's a lot of examples, but this is definitely one of them. You know, it costs a lot of mana, but that might be more negligible in a format like Commander, and this makes all your stuff tap for any color of mana, so it could pay for itself the turn that it comes out fairly easily. Note that it also makes your lands tap for any color mana, which like could be relevant, but especially in a deck like Bellow Bard of Brambles, where you have a ton of artifacts and enchantments. You want a double spell, but all your stuff costs like 4 mana or more, right? So this will make it a lot easier to double or even triple spell on certain turns, and that's really important for a deck like that. But this could also go in a number of tokens decks, maybe green-white tokens-y builds, but also stuff like Chatterfang. You know, you're making a ton of tokens in that deck, and all of them can now tap for mana, so you can pay more stuff that makes even more tokens. I don't know, maybe I'm going overboard and the card is just a little bit win more or too expensive for what you're actually getting out of it, but I think this could have a slot in multiple Commander decks, and I mean, look at the card, that's pretty obvious. But my number 9 is Tellah Great Sage. This could be your Commander, and I think you'd get some real good use out of it, but obviously any number of Locust God or Niv Mizzet, take your pick as to which Niv Mizzet I'm talking about. It could be any of them, really. This works really well in, but there's a couple of more niche commanders this works nicely in. There's stuff like Zaphi, for instance. Zaphi could be your Commander and Tellah in the 99, or the other way around. I mean, like, they're actually kind of similar cards when you get down to it, but, you know, both of them want you to cast relatively large spells and get benefit out of that. So again, whether one's in your 99 and the other's your Commander, it doesn't really matter. They work nicely together. But there's also Magnus the Red. Magnus the Red is really interesting with Tellah, and I think you do want Magnus to be your Commander in this case, because you could also play stuff like Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, get a lot of tokens that way, and Tellah could just be one of the ways that you're getting tokens. But interestingly, Magnus also makes all of your really expensive instants and sorceries way cheaper to cast once you do have a lot of tokens. So that means you can cast Meteor with Tellah a lot easier if that's what you want to do. So, I don't know, there's a lot of really cool stuff about these two guys together, and I think that it might actually rejuvenate Magnus the Red, a guy that's always been really cool, but overshadowed by other Izzet commanders. But for number 8 here, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just talk about two cards at the same time. Both Kuja Genome Sorcerer, who I'm very excited about and we'll talk about in a second, but also Black Waltz number 3, which I'm going to talk about first. As a matter of fact, this is going to be the first Commander deck that we build this season. I've already asked the patrons what commanders they want to see, and Black Waltz number 3 smashed everybody else from Papalimo to Hope Estheim and a couple of other creatures, man. I think that there's a good reason why a lot of people are excited about a Gutter Snipe that just gets to chill in their command zone. Just like Papalimo, Totolimo, I was talking about how you don't really get to do Orzhov Spellslinger very much. Rakdos Spellslinger you get to do a little bit more often, but not to this cool of an effect. I mean, just making sure that you basically always have access to your Gutter Snipe, you don't have to like wait to draw it, is pretty cool, but this goes well in a deck with Gutter Snipe, and also like the million other creatures, Coruscation Mage, whatever, that care about you casting non-creature spells. So Rakdos Spellslinger dealing damage to everybody, it just seems like the time of your life. But Kuja can do something very similar, you know. He himself doesn't really care when you cast non-creature spells, but he makes a little wizard guy every turn that does care about that. And once you get him flipped over, well, suddenly all of your wizards and such deal extra damage whenever they pop off. So that also seems great in a deck full of those same cards. Coruscation Mage and Black Waltz number 3 and Gutter Snipe, who I believe is a wizard, and yada yada. You know, you got Harmonic Prodigy to really beef up the power level of both of these cards. Harmonic Prodigy also works with Tellah. interestingly enough, but it has gone up in price by a couple of dollars over the last week or two, and that's a pretty big percentage increase for a card like Harmonic Prodigy, by the way. It's like $6 now. But I think that the main reason for that is the existence of these two guys. So not really surprised that it's gone up. Harmonic Prodigy's looking great with this set, but just in general, Rakdos Spellslinger looks like a fun deck to play. And just like I said with Tellah and a bunch of his cards I had to bring up when talking about him, you could put, Kuja in the 99 of Black Waltz number 3, or again, vice versa, and I think you'd be having fun either way. But my number 7 is Matoya, Archon Elder. Probably the coolest song in all of Final Fantasy belongs to this lady, but there's a lot of really cool songs in Final Fantasy, Laughing Mad's great. But anyway, Matoya. I'm not sure that she's going to be the best commander in the world, but she could be your commander. There's a lot of ways to surveil at a pretty good value in commander. Just some kind of normal cards you can play in your main deck is stuff like Gossip's Talent. Now whenever you play a creature, you draw a card, you scry one and then draw a card. Gross. Retreat to Coralheim. Land drops, now scry one, draw a card. Does that sound good enough to you yet? In case it doesn't, because I honestly wouldn't blame you. Maybe Elrond. Either Elrond is in the 99 of Matoya, or again, the other way around, I think is more likely in this case. You play Elrond as your commander, Matoya in the 99, and suddenly whenever you play a creature again, you are now drawing cards. That seems pretty powerful. But even though there's a lot of commanders this could work with, I would like to bring them all up. My favorite is probably Kinesos, which doesn't scry itself, but does scry more whenever you do happen to scry, and plays nicely on curve with Matoya to get you set up. So there's some stuff I liked about the two of these dudes together. You just don't see a whole lot of good decks that care about all the tentacled guys, and Kinesos does, and I think Matoya might go really well in there. But my number 6 is that other equipment that I promised you, and again, it's maybe not any of the ones you expect. It's Machinist's Arsenal. It kind of cost a lot to get out and a lot to equip for that matter, but at least it has job select. I like that about it. It could, first of all, go nicely in just about any Boros Equipments deck, which on EDH right now are the decks it's going in the most. But I think there's a lot of options beyond just equipment for a card like this. So an obvious one is probably Mendicant Core, which is a cheap commander that cares about the number of artifacts you're playing. You're probably playing a lot of low-cost artifacts and filling the board with them, or maybe getting tokens or something. And Machinist Arsenal is going to pump your guys like an ancestral mass for artifacts, basically. And you know how good ancestral mass can be from time to time. This can make even just the 1/1 that it comes on into an enormous dude, but once you start getting, trample or flying or unblockability or even lifelink on one of these things, and you're starting to do some really, really good stuff. Which is why I think it might go nicely with Sidri Galvanic Genius, right? This is kind of an Esper Artifacts Matter commander that can animate artifacts for a really, really cheap cost. But in terms of Machinist Arsenal, what's really neat about it is that it can also give your artifact creatures Death Touch and Lifelink. So if you're getting through with like a 10 power creature, which you can because of Machinist Arsenal, giving that creature Lifelink is a huge, huge deal. I guess back to like Jan Jansen or Jan Janssen or whatever. Again, that's one that can create a lot of artifact tokens over the course of the game, and it also gives you little guys to staple the arsenal too. So there's a lot you can do with this in a lot of different commander decks. And I just want to point it out because it's another one I don't really see enough people talking about. This card is very good. But now we're halfway down the list, and we're going to start looking at some really bomb cards like Y'shtola Rule. There is, of course, the Precon Commander Y'shtola, and that card looks like a lot of fun for a guy like me, but I actually think that this might be the more powerful Y'shtola at the end of the day. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, especially about Commander, but getting a couple of insteps and, blinks too every turn is just so outrageously powerful that this should do something. But it also works with Atraxa, not the 7-mana one, but the other one that's been in the top commanders for the last 2 years on EDH for the last 5 years. If that made any sense. I feel like Atraxa is always going to be one of the most popular commanders for people to build on EDH for a number of reasons, but again, getting extra in-step proliferate triggers is crazy, so you'll probably play this in Atraxa as well. And it obviously goes nicely with Conjurer's Closet. Again, you're just getting a bunch of blinks every turn, so there are a ton of creatures just in mono blue that you can blink to great effect with this, but once this ends up in the 99 of decks, then suddenly it can blink a lot of other creatures too. So I expect a lot out of this. We'll see if it ends up ruling Commander with an H. But anyway, we'll move on to number 4, which is just the crystals. I don't have a whole lot of tech or like decks that these could go in or whatever this time around. It's just a really good cycle of cards. I think the black one is the best, but I might be wrong. Again, I'm often wrong about Commander, but I also really like the green one. I guess we'll put that in number 4. Then it gets a little bit harder. I think the red one is middle of the road, but still really good. They're all still really good. Like, even though I'm going to put the white and blue ones as the 4th and 5th ones, that does not mean that they won't end up seeing play. These are all exceptionally powerful cards that just have, medallions stapled to them, plus other things the color wants to do. So in a way, it's almost like, why would just about any Commander deck not want, 1 or 2 or 3 of these, depending on how many colors they're playing, I think if you're playing fewer colors, like in monocolored decks, these are obviously much, much better, especially depending on what the theme of your deck is. But, you probably got some +1/+1 counter stuff in green, so the green one's just good. The black one is basically always good, almost no matter what your game plan is. So again, I like more or less all of these, but I do like some more than others. But let's get to the top 3, y'all. And speaking of the white and blue crystals, they might not be my favorite in terms of like power level, but they both go really, really well in Hope Estheim over here. This might be the commander I'm actually most excited about building, despite the fact that Kuja, Black Waltz number 3, Hope Estheim, Papalima Totolimo, Celeste, there's a lot of amazing commanders that I actually really want to build in this set, like genuinely am excited to build, but Hope Estheim looks like one of the more annoying, but also one of the more unique. You just don't really see life gain and mill meet very often, and they're both 2 of the most maligned and least powerful things you can do on average in a game of Magic, but Hope changes that greatly. Not the fact that they're hated strategies, but the fact that they're not actually that good. Hope suddenly makes both of these strategies together insane. Just with a beacon of immortality, please do not come at me in the comments section. Doubling your life does in fact count as gaining life. If you have to Google it, it's right there. I'm telling you, that will prove my point. But anyway, it does work with Beacon and other effects that double or triple your life total. And that seems really, really dangerous. But just in this set, there's Elixir, which is kind of like an Elixir of Immortality, but there's a much higher upper limit on the amount of life it can actually gain you, and so you can probably do some gross stuff with Hope and an Elixir. But then there's more obvious stuff, like Rock's Faithmender, which doubles the amount of life you gain, Alhamaret's Archive, which does the same thing, plus extra stuff, Bruvac, which doubles the amount of cards that opponents mill, so just in a couple of turns, if you're doing it right, I'm pretty sure you can knock everyone else out of the game, and this is a very cheap commander that's in the right colors for protecting it, so I actually think this is kind of dangerous. But my number 2 more or less absolutely has to be on the list, and I think a lot of people are going to be shocked it's not number 1. It's Vivi Ornitier over here. I don't know that this is the number 1 commander card in the set, but it's definitely at least the number 2. And this is usually the part of the video where I talk about all the cool spells, the non-creature stuff that you're playing with Vivi on the table, but it's pretty obvious that you want to increase his power somehow, so you can use pump spells and stuff, so it becomes mana positive a lot faster. There's obviously ways to break this with non-creature spells, but as far as a lot of the creatures you can play alongside him, I haven't heard as many people talk about those. So first of all, Nimizit Visionary, that seems kind of fun because whenever he pops opponents, you get to draw cards off of it. Cool. Burgi probably goes in the 99 of this card because, whenever you cast a non-creature, you freaking make mana, so that can make you more mana, and Vivi already makes you mana, so the 2 of these things together are just making more mana than a group of elves. But apart from that, I guess there's Archimage Emeritus. Again, you're casting a lot of non-creatures. You probably want to draw cards off of them. O'Hare Axonil will make it deal more damage. That seemed cute. And then Quicksilver Elemental. If you're not hip to this yet, this card has actually gone up multiple thousands of % ever since Vivi was spoiled because this is really good alongside Vivi. You can basically give Quicksilver Vivi's ability until end of turn, and then you can switch it to another creature back to Vivi again for just 1 blue mana, and that will mean you can make more mana because it's a different Vivi this time, and it doesn't know that it's already used that ability this turn. So if you have even one other creature, you can keep bouncing Quicksilver Elemental back and forth between Vivi and the other creature and making effectively infinite mana. So the reason the card spikes so hard. There are a lot of really good creatures you can play alongside Vivi, and I know you probably don't want to play too many in your deck, but there's more than enough to want to play at least a couple. But ultimately, this is the best commander in the set, which is reflected when you look at the EDH rankings. A lot more people building a lot more decks with this than any other commander in the set by a huge margin, and it's pretty easy to see why people are really excited about it. But a card that I think will probably see more play across more decks at least is number 1, Louisoux Sacrifice. Now, the decks that people are talking about this the most in are Rogrock, because he's, cheap commander to sacrifice, but also like Thrasios. This has partner and is cheap, so you should have 2 cheap commanders to sacrifice to Louisoux. So again, that makes the card a little bit better, at least in theory, but I just think the card is generally good, and you don't have to sack your commander to it. You probably have other legendary creatures in your 99 of your commander decks. So I see a lot of people, basically saying that, well, you have to sack your commander to it. What if you built your deck around your commander? That's a totally viable thing to say, but again, I think most of the time you've either built the deck around a commander that can be sacrificed easily or for some value, or again, you've got a bunch of other legendary creatures in the deck you don't mind sacking. I actually expect this to do some work in Standard, but Commander is obviously the format for a thing like this. And even if you have to pay full price for it some of the time, you won't really feel bad doing that, especially if it ends up, countering like a Fastest Oracle trigger or something like that. Or just the sweeper, or the removal spell that's trying to target your most important creature, or whatever it is. A single blue mana for not necessarily a hard counter, but a very efficient counter is something a lot of people are going to be sleeving up, believe me. Unless I'm wrong, Commander is probably the format that I'm most likely to be objectively incorrect about, but honestly, I'm not sure there is an objectively incorrect with Commander. Everyone plays in a different pod with different people and different brackets, if you even use that system, different budget levels. Everyone has a billion different Commander decks, and they're all different power levels with different cards. So again, you're going to have a different experience, even in the same pod some of the time. So again, my experience is such that I think all of these cards are not only somewhat powerful looking, but just fun and exciting to want to build around. So I can't wait. On that note, let me know what your cards that you're excited to build in EDH are from Final Fantasy, because there's obviously kind of a lot to choose from. And when you're done with that, do all the YouTube stuff, y'all. Hit the like button. It's shaped like a thumb. You can't miss it. You can also hit the sub button. I don't know what that does. Give it a shot. Report back to me. Let me know. But there's also a Patreon. It's $1 a month to get involved. You can vote on what decks we do this season. I've already said we're going to do Black Waltz number 3 first because of the patrons. But right now they're in the process of choosing our first standard deck of the season. You can get in on that action for the next couple of days if you throw $1 in the Patreon pot. Link in the description. And of course, there's going to be a bunch more polls in the next 6 to 8 weeks as we move through FF season. But aside from that, I'm basically donezo for this one, so I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.